Now, I did say, or at least we did say, yeah, that has come out, right? That this was more of a workshop than it was a presentation. So I'd like to have as much interruption or interaction or whatever as we can get as we're going through. I'm just talking about my experience really in terms of the computer logging, and to give some encouragement to others to have a stab at it if you haven't already, or maybe eye-opening in terms of some of the other programs which you can use. As I said, I will only be using free software today. I have a principle of not paying for software. What that really means is that there's a whole bunch of amateurs out there who are very happy to beaver away and produce their own software. And I'll cover some of the origins of some of these things as well. For instance, the VHF software that a lot of people use for contests is written primarily by Mike Goody down at in Berkshire anyway. And he started doing it just because he wanted to get some good software for himself. And the fact that the entire VHF fraternity in this country is now using it, sort of by the way, and there's a whole bunch of other people now that help and maintain the software. But that's the way that an awful lot of these things happen. It is amateurs doing stuff for amateurs and not necessarily wanting any recompense for it. They're quite happy to take contributions and donations if you want to do that as well. I think there's one interesting point I might mention to start with, which is about logging itself and why do we do logging. And I was reminded, and Jeremy, you'll remember this as well, as we have licenses coming from about the same era. When we were first licensed, it was mandatory to record your contacts in a log. It was mandatory to say when you closed the station down. So it was, you actually had to put down that every CQ call you were supposed to log, and that became increasingly silly when we got FM and repeaters, because you never closed the station down. You left the handheld on the whole time, and the station was not anymore. Yes, that's right. Yes, it had to be in a bound book. Yes, and there was a special exemption for white stick operators to have loose leaf. And over time then, they could inspect it. Yes, that's right, you could be inspected. Yeah, so if you were causing interference, then they could come and look at your log, and you could show that you were or weren't causing interference at the time. So over time then, the mandatory nature of logging fell away, and it's now entirely optional as to whether you fill in a log or not. But if you want to record contacts for award purposes or for contest purposes or whatever, then keeping a log and keeping it in one place is quite a good idea. Trying to scurry around looking in multiple logs is quite hard. So hence I'll describe what I do with my contacts and logging. So the programs that I'm going to look at tonight are Log4OM, which is a general purpose logging tool, N1MM Plus, of which I'm a total novice and I hate it to death, but you need to use it for most of the HF contests. MINOS, which I use extensively for VHF contests. There are others that I use, which like SD for the Irish contests. Are there other favourites? Because a lot of people have favourites. Is there any others that people do use at the moment or have tried? You're using Ham Radio Deluxe, yeah. So, any others? Because I tried things like Logger 32, and I tried a couple of others when I was.
32 is used extensively by the National Radio Centre.
Right.
I know that.
Right.
But I've never used it.
Yeah. So as I say, the one that I use for general use is Log4OM. Actually, it's log4OM2 because it's on version 2 now. This is the super dupered up version 2 of it. As I say, it is free. It is written by, primarily written by an Italian amateur whose call sign escapes me, IW something or other. And it is also maintained by a whole bunch of people. And there's quite a lot of YouTube videos support done by G4POP, Terry, who has a lot of content up to help you set the thing up. As with a lot of logging programs, they are quite daunting when you first look at them. With Log4OM, when you first start it up, it's got loads and loads of stuff on it which you don't necessarily need. And the trick is to work out which bits to turn off rather than just be overwhelmed with it. What it does show is, if you click on the right bit, I'll demonstrate these later on. I've just got some PowerPoints here. That's all of the stuff that's the most recent QSOs listed there. You can see that I've got 8,558 QSOs in this particular database at the moment. I decided to separate out the database for contests from the database for general purpose, hence giving me less problem with air miles.
Well, that's not the problem. The problem is if you get a fault with the database, you've lost a lot.
Yeah, well, the thing is, with a lot of these databases, they self-back up when you exit, so it's not so much of an issue. And the main screen, again, I'll demonstrate this later on, gives you, well, a map of the world. That's always handy to see where the grey line is. When you key in the name of a person that you're going to work, then a little map comes up here showing where they are. And down here, it'll show you things like their locator, as derived from qrz.com.
Do you have to be an upgraded QRZ?
Yes.
User for that function?
Yes, that's right. So qrz.com is a great resource for looking people up. If you just use it on the web, you can type in a call sign and the type of information available there will be their name, their address, if they have put it all in. Some people just don't. Their locator, quite often, and there's also a little map that can come up. If you pay qrz.com a few quid, it's not very many per year, then they make available an XML interface which you can query automatically. What Log4OM can do is it can go off to that database, query it, and come straight back up and give you all of that information sort of before you've actually had much of a contact with the person. It's quite useful sometimes to correct information that you may have misheard, not in contests, obviously. However, the QRZ information itself may be incorrect. So you've just got to be a bit cautious. So sometimes people have moved to another location they haven't updated, or in Guy M0GUY's case, he hadn't put his own locator in and it was the default one, which is IO91VL, which is nowhere near here. So you've got to be a bit cautious with it. Yeah, it's right. It's somewhere in London. Yeah, well, just West London or something, which is it's a weird location. But so the other two that I'm going to talk about and do some demos of, N1MM, as I say, it's used for HF contests. If you have a problem with logging programs, then multiply that by about 10 for N1MM. When you get it working, it's fine, but it is a pain to get it set up. And I've got nods from people over there that have also lived and suffered with N1MM. It is very well featured in the end, but it's a right pain to...
I think the problem I find is trying to find the right context for it.
Yes, that's right.
I'm trying to
Yes.
say, well, I'll just help you guys out with that contest. I've got to find out where that is in the list.
Yes. So the clue is in the name of it.
Yeah.
So it was written by N1MM, a US guy. So hence it's very US-centric in terms of its contest support. And you probably have to kludge the settings to make it work for some of the UK contests. And then MINOS, which I say is used extensively by the VHF-UHF fraternity, and it's one that I know more about than the other ones. So I was going to do a bit of a demo for those as well. I will come back to formats later on in terms of the logging formats, and start off just by showing you some demonstrations of the way that these programs look. Right. Okay, so on the screen here, this top left-hand corner is the bit that you use when you're inputting information. So when you want to work, when you're going to work someone, if you're doing this all manually, then let's think of a call sign like M0IHY. And immediately you see it's gone off to the internet, and it's hopefully going to get something there. Yeah, but no, it hasn't actually done that there, so let's just hope that it'll do that at some point. If you're internet connected, so you're at home, you're on a fast internet connection, his name will come up here, the grid location will come up here. You're correct in QRZ.com, are you, Brian?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, right, okay, fair enough. Other stuff then, you can put the operator's name in here if it's not been retrieved automatically, or you can overwrite it.
Do you have to, this is a good question
Yeah.
for yourself, do you have to enter into that program your password for QRZ.com?
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes, yes. Oh, actually, what you have to put in is your XML key.
Yeah.
So when you subscribe to QRZ.com, when you pay a few quid,
Yeah.
which is definitely worth doing if you're going to do this type of thing.
$29.95.
For a year, yes, it comes out at about £20 a year, which is not an awful lot. Then you put the XML key in. Let's just show you that. So under Settings, it's External Services and QRZ.com, and there's my API key. Don't copy it, please. So that's my unique key that I've paid for, and that's the thing then that QRZ.com will respond if it sees that key. So what will normally happen is you put the call sign in here. Because I'm internet connected, if I were, and it's not doing exactly what it should be doing at the moment, it'll fill in the operator name, it'll fill in the grid. You'll notice that there's a start time and a stop time. If I exit that now and I put in M0IHY, the start time and stop time are grayed out. They're all incrementing at the moment. You can see them counting up. That's 8, 9, 10. So in other words, it's not like I've started the QSO. I've actually got to press a tab, then it locks the start time. And then when I finish the QSO, carriage return, just to save it, and it fills in the stop time as well. Things like the band and the mode and a bunch of other things here, if you are connected to the rig, which again I was hoping was going to work, but it doesn't seem to be connected correctly. And again, if this is at home, then everything is connected to the rig. You can interface your logging program to your rig using a CAS interface, typically a USB. In this case, with the 590, it's a USB, goes straight into the back of the rig. That's right, and I've got COM4 set up. I probably need to restart the computer.
Yeah.
And when you've got all of that connected, it means that when you change band, it'll come up in your logging program and it'll follow it and all the rest of it. Otherwise, you end up thinking you've worked someone on 80 meters when you work them on 2 meters and things like that, which is not a great idea. There's some downsides on that, which I'll also talk about in a mo. So you can see that all of that entry panel there has got everything that you might need for that particular person. What can appear in the bottom right-hand corner is a little map showing where that person is located and which beam heading, which if you're working them on anything where you need a beam heading, it'll tell you what in this case, it'll tell you what the short path and long path is. If it's VHF, it's always short path. Long path is when you're working around the back of the world, when conditions are appropriate for some of the HF contacts. And it'll also tell you how far away they are. In this case, 97 kilometres it says, but then that says IO 92, so that's obviously somebody else that's just been left in there. So we won't worry too much about that. Log40M, as I say, gives you a list of all your recent QSOs. You can see them all. I'm just scrolling down. There's a massive amount of information it stores for every single contact. Thankfully, you can turn off most of that on the screen that you're looking at. Otherwise, there's just so much of it. But even now, you can tell here there's a QSO date, the call sign, the band, the frequency, the exact frequency as recorded from the CAT interface, the mode that I used, the report sent and the serial number if it was a contest, the grid square, the name, my call sign, their address, their age. Exactly, I should have turned this one off. And you see all this stuff here has been derived for each and every QSO, which compared with what when Jeremy and I first were licensed and started writing things into logbooks, you were lucky to just about put the name in, I think. And probably, luckily, they just made it frequency bands that you were on rather than the exact frequency. Also within Log40M, there is. This is when you're connected to the internet. There is a cluster interface. Now, a cluster is. Are you familiar with clusters at all, guys? Right, okay, so they used to be packet radio, but they're now all internet connected. Computers dotted around the world, and when you might hear someone who's a rare station, you can pop it in the cluster. Here we are, that has come up, so I am internet connected. So it'll tell you which band a particular station is on, and what frequency they're on, and if you spot on the cluster, crikey, I really need to work Tanzania here, then I've got to go on 14015 CW. There you are, Jeremy. Have you done Tanzania?
Yes.
Well done. Yeah. And he was spotted by a Spanish station. It tells you who the reporting was. So people around the world are all the time sticking in spots, rare spots. You can filter these by particular band, so you can just say, let's just look at 20 metre. That's all the 20 metre ones there. You can see what mode they're on, digital, CW. Actually, most of that's CW. Have I got CW sound? Yeah, that's right, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So loads of stateside people being spotted by other stateside people. That's not terribly useful. But the fact that all of that cluster stuff is built into your logging program means that if you see someone that you want to work, you can actually, if this is all working, like double click on it, it'll bring that data, well yeah, you've already seen it, it's brought that data up into my worked area here. You see, so as if I'm trying to work 5i3b, and would also switch your radio to the right frequency. So you can see this is starting to now be a complete console for your station rather than it just being a bit of paper that you scribble down people that you work with.
The downside of that is, of course, that everybody else does it at the same time.
Yes, that's right. So everyone pounces on rare spots.
Yeah, you try and work the rare station and you're competing with people using half their national grid.
We're talking about Italians here.
Yeah, and Ukrainians.
Other bits which I'll just touch on, you see this one here, it says new one, new band, new mode. I can never quite get the hang as yet because I'm still a bit of a novice on all the colours, but this all colour codes as to whether that's a new country that I haven't worked before, if it's a new station, which is quite common, and so on and so on. Morocco is an annoying one for me in that I've worked it 3 times and they still haven't confirmed. So I really need to get Morocco to get their act together and confirm, because I need that country at the moment.
With emails from them saying you haven't confirmed.
No, I haven't had emails from them. No, they're just, I put it into Logbook of the World, and yeah. Other things you can do, there's a worked before, so if I wanted to put M0IHY in here, it'll tell me all the times I've worked Brian in this log here. So you will concur with that, I'm sure, Brian, that all of those stations, all of that slot has been worked. Up at the top here, if the cat control was working, which I haven't had enough time to get it working with this rig here, it'll tell you what frequency you're on. If there's 2 VFOs in the rig, it'll have both VFOs here. And as you switch between VFOs in the rig, it'll become the active one up here. And that'll also switch things like the mode and all the rest of it as well. So it's quite handy to have the whole lot integrated into one part. So that's the sort of bare bones of the log4OM program. There's a few bits down the bottom that you can just see the state. It actually says cat status is connected, but obviously not talking to one another, because otherwise this would be correct up here. So it's a bit of a nuisance why that's not actually doing what it should be doing. For those who were at Brill, we used log4OM for all the logging when we were up at Brill. We did have it internet connected most of the time using a hotspot from a phone, and it did actually do everything that I described and seemed to work quite well. The mobile coverage was quite good up there. You said about setting it up. Let me just show you the setup screen. This again is quite daunting when you're first starting off, but there's not a vast amount of stuff that you need to stick in it. The important bit is station information, which is your call sign, the region that you're in, the IARU region, which is number 1. You put your country in, you put your name and so on. You don't actually have to do all of this, it's just useful to have it all there in there. And station configuration, so this is what my station looks like at home. The main station is a TS2000 and various dipoles. I should delete the Cushcraft R5 vertical because that committed suicide. Sorry, it fell down in the wind. And a 6-meter Yagi and 2-meter and so on. So I've got various bits of kit, various stuff in there. All of the stuff is held in a single database running SQLite or SQLite. And you can create new databases if you want to have multiple groups of contacts. And then the rest of it, you can just add in bits as you need to. If you want to, you can have it interfacing into an antenna rotator. So it automatically turns the antenna to the right location. And all sorts of other stuff as well, which I haven't delved into. It's just like there's so much underneath the surface of an awful lot of these programs. So the next one I'm going to show then, because it is quite important for a lot of the stuff that we do, is MINOS. So within the MINOS screen, here's this bit where you stick all of the station information in. So if you want to put in M0IHY, it is entirely based around contest operating. So things like serial number, really important, the serial number that you're going to send to the next station, the report that you're going to give them, 5 and 9, of course, Brian, and you're going to give me 5 and 7 because you're mean, and then the serial number that you give me, 25 or something like that, and your locator, which is IO91 SS. Right, yeah. Actually, if you look at this one, this has actually been set up for someone called G3XZG, operating on 50 megahertz. So this is a leftover from a previous contest that Jeremy sent me the log, and then I imported it into this so that I could submit it to the contest committee. That's the panel where you stick things in. Above here is the panel that shows you all the stations you've worked. You can see some of them have got blue highlighting on there. That's a new square. So for a lot of contests in VHF, it's a new square. And on the right-hand side, this is also quite important, you can see that there's a map of all the squares that you've worked. And as you can see, IN53, there was an Italian station that Jeremy worked down here somewhere. You worked, JN53. Yes, IK5ZWU, worked them on the key. And that's just a useful indication there of if you're trying to get as many squares as you can, which is really important for scoring in a VHF contest, then you can have them all set up here. The way that MINOS looks and the way that it's set out here is not necessarily what you would see if you first turned it on, because it is set up such that you can put loads and loads of extra panels in. If you've got rig control, again using the CAT interface, then there's another panel that comes up to control that. If you've got antenna control, you can put a panel in for that. It's completely unnecessary if you're starting out and you just want to log ordinary programs. And if that's the case, then what I recommend when you start it up, let me just show you the startup screen. When it starts up, you see it says here, welcome to MINOS version 2410, and there's the OK button, which you would normally press to start everything up. Where it says here, logger only, if you really just want to run the logging program, press logger only. Because that will just start up the logging program, and it won't start all those peripheral bits. It won't try and do CAT control, it won't try and do everything. So if you're starting up, just go for the logger, and you'll get a screen looking a bit like this. You may not see this bit here with the locator map, because you can say whether you want it to be a clock. Not terribly useful, is it? DXCC countries, district filters, but the one that I always want to put up here is the map. Some people like to look at the locator tree. I don't find that very useful. The map is always the great thing that you get, an impression about where it is that you want to work. The stuff down here is jolly interesting. G0CNN portable. So let's think that we'd forgotten that we'd worked G0CNN. So immediately, if you try and put that call sign in, it comes up red saying you've already worked them. Down here, it'll tell you when you worked them down here. The one that I always nearly think I've worked, there's a whole bunch of people with MHZ and GHZ as their suffixes. Yes, there's M1 MHZ, there's M0 GHZ. There's, who's the guy in Aylesbury? That's is it G0 MHZ, I think it is. And Dick, isn't it, in Aylesbury? And if you're not careful, you stick the call sign in, and then it comes up red, and you think, I haven't worked them, and then you realise you've got the wrong person. And so that can be quite good at catching errors before you make them. The other bit that's really valuable in MINOS, which doesn't seem to have loaded here, it's probably, the file is probably stored on my file server at home, not on the computer, so I can't see it, is if you have worked this station before in a previous contest, then it will, on the bottom right-hand panel, if you've got this set up correctly, it will remind you where they were last time you worked them and which contest it was that you worked them in, so that you can verify that you've heard the locator correctly. Yeah. And obviously you wouldn't copy the locator from a previous contest into the current contest, would you? No, definitely not. No. But actually, if you just double-click on it, it fills it in for you. So I mentioned that MINOS allows you lots of different screen formats. And I have to admit, it takes a bit of time to get your head around how the screen formats are set up. That was test run. Let's just see what happens if I click on one of these. Right, okay. So you see I've asked it to show me a different screen format, and this one is showing, that's not going to work because I haven't set this one up. If you had cat control, then that would come up here. This would allow you to do band select and so on. So just to give you a flavour of the fact that there are a multitude of other bits that you can turn on and turn off, and you can resize some of these things as well. The best thing is start just with the basic setup, and then as time goes on, you can, where are we? That one there. Yeah, as time goes on, you can start turning on some of the other functions and see if things make sense. Brian mentioned about the contest setups in N1MM, which we'll have a look at in just a sec. The nice thing about MINOS, it's designed and built by British people for British contests. So if you want to start afresh, you click on here. It says New Contest, and it will come up with the entire VHF calendar. So this is all the VHF contests. And what's more, the next one will be highlighted there, which is the FT8AC next Wednesday. Sorry, I'll be late for only listening on the Club Net because it's the FT8 contest next week. So click on that one, and it fills in all of the date and time. And what MINOS also allows you to do is within station, you can preset all of your station information. So for station, I will be, okay, I haven't got my, because this isn't my normal station computer, I haven't got my digital setup in here, but I will have my call sign there and my location there, and it pre-fills all of that. So you can preset all of that stuff, not just for yourself, but for a whole bunch of things. So I've got, G3MDG is listed in here as well, for if we're operating in other places. And I've got, Jeremy, I've got all of your parameters in my MINOS here. So when you send me a file, I can just incorporate it directly into this and your location and everything. Yeah. So that's the rather nice setup for that one. So I'll go back to that. So the other one then I was going to talk about was the famous N1MM. The first thing to notice about this is that there's a bit here which is a little panel, and there's another bit here which is another panel, and as you turn on more and more and more functions, more panels come up. So whereas with Log4OM it was all in one window, and with MINOS it's all in one window, with N1MM, if you're not careful, there's bits all over the place. And it's great if you've got multiple screens and you really are keen on all the different functions and putting different bits on different screens. But it can be a bit of a pain as well. It's the same sort of idea here, where this is where you do the data entry. So N0IHY goes in there. It's again set up for contests. So the important bits about contests are serial numbers, and basically, because it's HF contests, look what happens when I press the Shift key, the Tab key to move to the next field. It assumes it's 5 and 9. So it pre-fills 5 and 9, and you actually have to do something to not be 5 and 9. And it then pre-fills the serial number 2, and then the received is 5 and 9, and then you just go over here to put in 25 or something for the, because, right, yes, never mind about that. Mode field is wrong. Irritations about N1MM, because I love giving irritations about this. One is you have a contact with someone like this, M0IHY, and you see, I don't know if you can see this on the sent serial number here. There's a grayed out 1. Can you see that grayed out 1? Now, that 1 comes from the previous contact. So it's not the serial number you're going to give to this person. You only see the serial number you're going to give them when you press the tab key and it comes up. Why is that? The reason is this is also designed for multiple operator contests. So if you've got a station which has 5 different people simultaneously operating and putting everything into a single log, so if there were several people operating simultaneously, but all sharing one log, they can do that with N1NN. It's been written that way. And whoever presses the tab key first gets that serial number. And that's why you don't see the serial number until you press it. So if ever you're operating in one of the HF contests with our group using N1NN, just beware that. So if you come out and operate in sideband field day, please do, because they'll be running N1NN if someone gets it working. Then watch out for that, because the serial number is the next thing that's going to come up.
The other thing N1NN has this problem is if you're doing search and facts and you move off the frequency before the log entry is finished, the log entry goes.
Yes.
We lose it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I've fallen foul of that on a number of occasions, much to the frustration of whether was logging for. You've got to get the log entry finished before you change frequency.
That needs to be registered.
Yeah. Now, as I understand it, there is an option to turn that feature off as well. But you're absolutely right on that one, because what can happen is you type in M0IHY and go to work him, and then you fail to work him, and you think, I'll go on to somewhere else. Spin the tuning dial, and then you don't want M0IHY still to be there, otherwise you may accidentally log them when you didn't work them. So that's why the feature, let's call it that, was there. But I think you can disable that. Yeah.
Can you display the band map on there?
I don't know that I can. Let's see if I can. Let me just see.
Useful feature.
That's right. So a lot of these logging programs have a band map. The frustration here is that if I was doing this at home, it's all set up to show it. Right, band map. I've just told it to put. Okay, where is it?
Is it behind it?
Yeah, probably.
Oh,
Dear. Yeah, it is very annoying. Yeah, it is. Yeah, there it was. Yeah. Right, there we are. Yeah, this is the frustration you see with where things are. So, okay, so the band map, which you can see here, will work with the cat interface if the cat interface was actually connected, which it doesn't seem to be. No, it isn't, so never mind about that. We can assume that on the right-hand side, that band map is tracking where your VFO is. Each time you work someone, so let's, except I can't because the mode thing says it's wrong. Hang on, I've got to change the mode somehow or other. Don't know how to do that on this one. As you work someone, their call sign will pop up on the display here. So you will get a map of all the people that you worked on different frequencies. Now, if you're sitting on a single frequency and working loads and loads of people all on the same frequency, it doesn't really matter that where all of the call signs are. But if you are tuning around the band, looking for stations to work, then having a list of all the people that you worked and where they were is jolly useful, because it means that you don't go to a frequency and try and work the same person twice, because you can see on the band map that that's who they are on that particular frequency. Several of the programs do this sort of thing. MINOS does the same. So MINOS has got a band map which you can switch on, One of the other great things about band maps is that they can be integrated. We talked about cluster before and people putting spots in. The band map can be integrated in with clusters. So a station can pop up on your band map with who you haven't worked. Normally that's indicated in a different color or something like that. You can say, that's someone I've not worked. Go to that particular location and work them. The rig will tune to the right frequency because you click on that and it'll update the VFO. If you're starting a new contest, here's where you set up new contests. And you can see there's a whole range of things like the Russian whatever it is and the Jordanian left-handed CW contest. And
by name, the same as the one that you
no,
want to do.
that's right. So there's things like the RSGB 80 meter CC. That's Club Championship, I think. The RSGB First 160 contest, the AFSC, the AFSS, and all those. They still call it the BERU, the Beru contest, Jeremy, I noticed. Yeah, that's been called the Commonwealth contest now for how many years?
I don't know, but everybody still sends BERU.
I know they do, but it's not been called that for a long, long time. And so sometimes you've got a contest and it's not listed here, quite frequently, it's not listed here.
There's another irritation on it, when you create a log, there's a thing called scent exchange.
The what, sorry?
I can just see it behind the drop down, it's got scent exchange.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I just put a hash
Yes.
in it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And for an awful lot, if you're just manually inputting things, that's not a problem.
But
But
doesn't like it, and I just found the only thing you put into it to get rid of it is just put a hash in.
Yeah, that's right. I ended up having to look it up in the manual in the end because what I was doing, N1NM will also interface with one of the digital programs that Brian mentioned earlier, FL Digi, for doing things like RTTY, radio teletype, and PSK contests. And for that, you need the logging program to tell the digital program what serial number to send. And if you haven't got those two working together, you just won't work anywhere. So then you've got to have all of this stuff here. So this scent exchange here, which is really important to stick, whether it's a hash or something or other in there. But you can see it's got all these different categories of what the contest is, and you can manually update all this stuff for a contest which you're not quite sure if it's one that's the right one. The scent exchange is one of the most important bits to get right. Yeah, and if you don't get that right, then you'll
If you're doing logging on that and you create a Cabrillo log, it's not included. It's
Yeah,
something that
that's right.
you have
It
to put
doesn't.
in there to get it to generate the log.
Yes. So if I did that now, probably I can probably now put you in here, Brian. Yeah. Oh yes, no, it does work. There you are. Yeah. So we're on CW now. I made it a CW contest. So that all works. Which you're mentioning about file formats swiftly brings us on to when you're using the logging program to then enter a contest, which is one of the reasons, there's particular file formats which are used by different contests. Would you believe the VHF world is very different from the HF world for no particularly good reasons that I can see? But most of the HF contests use this format called Cabrillo. And every line, it's just pure text. I've just got it in a table here, but it's pure text. But it looks just like this. QSO, and then there's a space. It's just a space or a number of spaces. Frequency, the mode, CW, the date. This goes back to a 2017 I grabbed from G3MDG. The time, your own call sign, the report and serial number that you sent, the station you worked, and their report and serial number. So this was obviously from, so this is CW, so this is not sideband field day. I don't know when this was. Yeah, that's right. So, well, it's MDG portable, so yeah. Anyway, it's 2017. Every line looks like that, just with space separators. And that's, I think, derived from the US side. I think they invented it, the ARRL invented it. And so hence all of the HF contests end up complying with that. Fortunately, if you want to enter an HF contest in this country, RSGB1, they always publish the format for that particular contest, so you can check. So things like N1MM will create a file just in this format, and you don't have to worry too much about it. The VHF contests are in this Reg 1 test, which is Region 1 of the IARU contest format. And for this one, it's date with no delineators. You see how the delineators for date there, 2017-06-03, whereas in the Reg 1 test, it's just 21, which is the year, 0101 for the date and for the month and date. Then the time, notice it's a semicolon between each field. So it's not spaces, it's semicolons. You don't put your own call sign in this case. Goodness only knows why Cabrillo wanted that, but there you go. So the call sign you worked, I can't remember what the one is, I think it was the mode. Then it's 5 and 9 the report, the serial number, 5, 9 the report, serial number, their locator, and 22 was the distance. So that had been calculated by the logging program. Actually, when you submit your log to the RSGB, they always rework it out anyway. So it doesn't matter whether you score it or not. So you can see it looks, quite a different format. The other important format for logging is the ADI format. Now, ADI is amateur radio data interchange format. The bad thing about this is it's totally fixed as to you have to have the right field in the right place and the right number of semicolons, otherwise it won't be read correctly. With the ADI format, look at this. You've got QSO date -:8. 8 is the number of characters after that close bracket. Time on, :4, 4 characters. Band, :2, 2 characters, 6 meters. Frequency, and so on and so on. It's completely extensible as a format. So you can put any number of fields in an ADI file, and then you finally finish off by saying end of record for that particular record. And then if you send it to someone and they only want to look at the QSO date and, I don't know, the mode, then that's all they read. So for instance, when we're doing the air miles stuff, I used to extract just the fields that Brian wanted. And then I thought, hang on, it doesn't really matter because he's only going to look at the ones he's interested in. So now that's one contact. That is one contact. And it's however many lines there are. So address, 47 characters of address, via Enrico Totti, 41/CL62 Perugia, Italy. Doesn't care about that, do you? Nope, don't care about that. So all this stuff, came out from log4OM. Masses and masses and masses of data for one single contact. And Brian's only interested in the locator, I think. So for instance, it's got my name in here, my postal code in here, my rig, my address, and all the rest of it. And then the person I've worked, Francesco Daoldo, and then so on and so on. So all Brian's interested in is who's the station that sent it, which is, in other words, my station call sign is in here somewhere. And Yeah, that's right. Date, time to prove it, and the locator that I worked, and that's about it. Yeah, but you can see that the ADI format is a brilliant format, and some contests you are allowed to enter with an ADI file. Generally, I would recommend to people to use the right logging program and submit in the format that they actually say. Reason for that is they've got a robot that'll check it, and then you know that you've been received correctly. Okay, so that's a really rapid run through of those three logging programs that I'm familiar with and use. I can help people set stuff up with Log4OM because I've done it. And when I find people that have done more stuff with it, then I shall be desperate to find out from them how to do it, because there's a whole bunch of stuff there that I've never yet touched. So I'd encourage, if you haven't done any computer logging, dip your toe in the water. There'll be people that can assist, and once you've found out stuff, you can then start assisting other people as well, because it's definitely a two-way street.